Alright, Jagex is back with the latest blog update for the Raids 4 rewards. I wanted to give my thoughts on the changes here. I would highly recommend going back and watching my first video on this topic, just so you have an idea of where I sit with all the Raids rewards here, but I'll go over them shortly as well in this one. So we're starting with the Rondash this time, and it seems I'm not the only one that was kind of wondering how this thing would work, so we can quick review the questions and the answers here. How will the Shield Bash work with a special attack? They are offering two different options here. They're saying either split the special attack orb or add a context-based second attack bar or second orb when the Rondash is equipped. Now, here's the thing about this, right? I think that splitting the special attack orb is the worst of the two ideas. And the reason why I think that way is because if you look at the top right at the spec bar, like this thing is already really small. This is not a big click box. I mean, I guess the equipment menu click bar is a bit bigger, but I feel like you're going to mess with a lot of people's heads dividing the spec orb in half, let alone dividing the spec bar in half. I don't think that's a very good way to use the item. I don't think it's the end of the world that if you want to send a spec weapon, you just hot swap to an Avernic real quick. I don't think that's the end of the world, really. And it adds some strategy to when you actually let a special attack rip and get the Rondash back on. I don't know if this is possible, but maybe they could keep this as the Rondash spec and then keep this as your main hand spec weapon in the attack options menu. I don't know, but if I were to take one of two of those options, I would say make it context-based. How does flat armor work with magic and typeless damage? If you didn't know, magic and typeless damage are not affected by flat armor. What Jagex is proposing, that they introduce magic resistance to allow the offhand to at least resist magic attacks, which I think is good. I think this is both necessary for this item, and I think it's good that they're separating it from flat armor, so that they can control what things can have magic resist, and they can add magic resist to something like enemies in the future. Overall, I think there's a good way to do this. All around W for this section. Cool, awesome. Can I use Shield Bash with a Granite Maul special attack instantaneous after one another? So they're saying yes, but they're saying that they should not do it. Now, I'm not a PvP guy, but like, would this cause ridiculous stackouts? Because you can't attack with two different weapons on the same tick. You would have to swap into Shield Bash. You have to Shield Bash into Gmaul spec, right? It would take a tick to Q the Shield Bash or Q the Maul, right? Like, I don't know. I may not be the best person to ask for this because I'm not really a PvP guy, so someone in the comments can let me know if this actually sucks terribly and needs to be nerfed. That's right. Comment on my video and I'll not cry anymore. How is Shield Bash's accuracy rolled? It rolls on crush accuracy based on your armor and not your weapon. So your weapon is not involved in the crush accuracy of this attack. Now, I am totally for this, and here's why. This carves a better niche for where the Rondash is best at. A lot of people were worried about the Avernic's place in the meta with the Rondash, and having this thing specifically roll on crush accuracy, I think gives it more competition between the Avernic Defender that I think was a little necessary, but I think it's okay as is. This is a good way to do it. Another cool thing about this is that this has unique synergy with Inquisitors. Not only is Inquisitor's crush accurate, but it's paper armor. So if you're getting chipped through prayer all the time because your defenses suck, you're constantly getting the chip damage necessary to let these Rondash hits rip. So super awesome interaction here, great synergy. I think this is a awesome weapon, and I'm super glad it's going to be in the game. In the next paragraph, they talk about how the Avernic Defender might be pushed out of the meta. I think this solves that mostly, but let's see what their suggestions are here. Bump the Rondash's strength bonus down and consider increasing the Shield Bash damage so it leans heavily more into what makes it unique. That's okay. I don't hate this idea. I wouldn't yell at the clouds if this happened. I don't think it's necessary, but like I said, I think this is fine. If people are really worried about the value proposition between the two, then and they just make the Shield Bash more damage, then I think that's okay. It will make the item more niche, and I think the crush accuracy is making it niche enough. So I don't think this is necessary. I think we get the additional niche with it being technically a crush weapon. Their second recommendation is remove all strength bonus from the Rondash and attach the defender to his. Jagex, don't you dare do this. Jagex, listen to me. Do not put upgrade scape onto this item. Don't do it. Here's the 2 reasons. First of all, do not make an upgrade scape between the 2 hardest raids in the game. Don't do it. Jagex, don't do it. That is terrible item design. This item would be so impossibly useless on its own if you had no strength bonus with it and you just attached a Vernic Defender to it and oh, now it's worth my time. Don't do this. Jagex, don't do this. Don't do this. Do not upgrade scape between 2 raid items. Don't do it. The other reason is that if you have to have a split special attack orb all the time when using a Rondosh, it's just gonna be so annoying. Having the context for every time you have an offhand, because you're gonna be using it constantly whenever you have an offhand then. There's no reason to not take it. So having the context menu on all the time when you have an offhand, it's just really annoying. Just don't do this. Make it its own unique thing. Make it its own item in the offhand category. Give it its own identity. Do not upgrade scape this. I think that is the worst possible thing you could do to this item. And the last paragraph, just talking about its place in the meta and whatnot. I think this item is super cool. I think adding a context-based special attack bar or a special attack orb, I think is the best way to go about this. Magic resistance, great idea, great concept. Put this in the game. Love this. No idea how I feel about this. Someone who's smarter than me about PvP, please let me know. I think the shield bash accuracy carves it a unique niche that I think gives it a identity worth having. I'm fine with bumping down the Rondosh's strength, but I don't think it's necessary. And Jagex, don't you dare do this. I will hate you forever. The Ascension crossbows. Here's the thing. In my previous video, I said these things were perfectly cool. And you know what? I still think that. They talk in this paragraph the limited amount of ammunition. I think it's fine that it's shipping with Diamond and Onyx. I'd rather them get this item right and then revisit the other tipped bolts. And I think that conversation needs to be a conversation about tipped bolts in general in this game. Ruby bolts hitting 110 on a ZCB is too much. If you are curious about my ideas for how I would rebalance bolts, I think the place that you would start is making the main gem bolts elemental. So like diamond, air, ruby, fire, emerald, earth, and sapphire, water. I think that's the best way to go about it because they've been going so hard into elemental weaknesses in this game that I think crossbows feeding into elemental weakness with tipped bolts, I think is a decent way to go about it. You know, they've made it such a priority that I think it would breathe new relevance to crossbows by giving them elemental affinities. Maybe give rubies a burn, give emeralds like a soft defense shred, give air like bonus damage, and give water like a slight healing effect, maybe? I don't know. That's just literally off the top of my head. I'm just spitballing with that. Don't take that suggestion too seriously, other than just why not elemental? I don't know. I think this is fine. I think we need to have a discussion about bolts in this game before we add any more tipped bolts to the Ascension crossbows. In this paragraph, they're talking about the resources. They mention how Ascension shards are going to be used to charge both the Tsar Breaker and to be used to make bolts for the crossbow. And since both of these will come from the raid, that they want to add a AFK style way to obtain these, similar to Ancient Essence and Demon Tears, just outside of the raid, right near the bank and all that. I think this is a good idea, but Jagex, whip out the calculators for this, because this has the potential to either make the crossbow and the breaker really, really expensive to use because it's used for both of them, or make them really dirt cheap to use, two of the best weapons in the game, both of which I think are very unhealthy scenarios. I love the idea here, right? I love the idea of being able to hang out in the raid lobby, you know, whip out a pickaxe or an axe or something and grab some of the shards while you wait. The last one is mentioning that the crossbows will work same as the toxic blowpipe. That'll be a 3-tick attack speed in PvP. Sort of inevitable, whatever. The other discussion I saw about the Ascension crossbows was that people are not happy with having yet another ammo type. And it's an interesting case to make because it's kind of a good point. The blowpipe didn't require a quiver slot to equip the ammo, but now these crossbows will require it, thus causing a bit of a disruption in the ammo economy and having to carry bolts around with you if you want to bring Ascension crossbows with you, which is a decided nerf to these weapons weapons. I don't think this is a intentional interaction. I think the best way to go about this, I would say, just let the bolts be put into the crossbows. Nobody wants to bring an extra ammo type into their TOAs when the blowpipe didn't have to do that. You know, I think this big trade-off, I think, is entirely unnecessary. Some people suggested just letting you use dragon bolts in the thing. I think that's a worse way to go about it because it devalues ascension shards, and I think ascension shards are crucial to giving this item not only its identity, but its attachment to doing this raid and getting the resources from this raid. So I'm much more in favor of just letting you throw the charges into the thing, like darts. Just don't make me use another ammo slot, please. Next up, the breaker. So if you saw, I was worried about the damage this thing was doing, otherwise was okay with its concept, and I was excited for how the range would work on this item. The first thing that they're addressing here is that, yeah, the breaker was going to be nuclear for the game. It was going to demolish the meta. So what do we got? Damage no longer re-rolls for every defense value higher than Crush. Instead of damage roll once by default, then an additional 2 for every melee defense higher than Crush. Okay, they're doing the Kirby suggestion. If you didn't know this, Mulgo Kirby made a video where he basically suggested this exact thing and did some calcs and showed its place in the meta, and that it was a lot more balanced. I'm 100% on this. I already saw the calcs for this. I think this is a good place to put it. This gives a healthy place for the weapon, and this weapon really is in a great place already. Like, that's kind of crazy. It took 2 blogs, and this weapon is in a fantastic place. I still wish that there was a beta so that people can test to make sure, but still, Kirby's suggestion was kind of the correct way to go about it. It really was, because he kind of found the magic formula for balancing this thing. Is the breaker's range 3 tiles? No. Man, if you watch my video on the first raid blog, this is what I was so excited about. Oh man, that's sad. It's okay, I'm still excited about the weapon. It's just kind of... I was thinking like how cool it would be to use a weapon like this, but you know, in the long run, I think this will control better and people will be happier if it controls this way. The breaker can hit up to 3 targets at once with no damage bonus applied. Only hit multiple targets if there isn't a 3x3 or larger enemy present. So if you didn't know, if you have a 2x2 enemy, say this is your 2x2 enemy, and you have another enemy on, I forget if it's the southwest or southeast tile, but if you have an enemy that's stacked on top of the 2x2 enemy, the scythe would hit the 2x2 enemy for 2 hits and the small enemy for 1 hit splat. It's kind of conditional on like how many enemies are under it and which it prioritizes, right? What Jagex is saying, if there is a 2x2 enemy and a 1x1 enemy right here, and I were to attack with my breaker, the 1x1 enemy would not get hit and the 2x2 enemy would get hit. There would not be multiple hit splats. So the scythe is still better for hitting multiple enemies at once, but the new item still is perfectly capable of doing it. So good to know. Here they talk about how the Megarare is a Tazar item. Honestly, I've sort of warmed up to this idea a bit more, you know, and apparently they're saving some kind of dive deeper to the archive. So there's some kind of reveal, I think, at the end of the raid that justifies why this is here, which I think is cool. I think that's fine and cool. In this paragraph, they talk about how people want the weapon to be like a crush, like a overhead slam, rather than you like kicking the rock forward. And a lot of people really don't like the kicking the rock forward thing, which honestly is kind of confusing me. Or maybe they just can't like conceptualize how this would be like a weapon. If you watch Ben Say on YouTube, he has some great videos about like the little rock on a sling thing that he uses. That's what I imagine when our character's like slinging this thing forward, crashing and breaking into everything in front of it, you know, throwing it forward like that is how I envision this weapon being used. And I think it's kind of cool. I don't know. Like, I wonder if Jagex wants to do like the throw forward thing because it communicates the breaker hitting up to 3 targets at once better, or maybe it's like an engine limitation. I'm not sure, because they really are doubling down on this. The hybrid armor. Here we go. So the thing about the hybrid armor is that I didn't like it. I think it had no place in the game. I think it should drop from different content, and I think it should be turned down. Let's see what they have to say. They decided they are not moving forward with the hybrid armor for the Fractured Archive. Yeah, this is how that, yeah. This doesn't belong here, in my opinion, and it needs to be toned down a lot less. It needs to not come from raids, and it needs to be a bit less than what it is, because it was stepping on all sorts of toes. I thought it was going to be worthless, but when I saw calcs from this armor, this would have made every armor worthless. I said they can just introduce best in slot mage armor, but let's see what they come up with. The Gatekeeper's Cane, magic DPS spec weapon. This is how they talk about how the Volatile Nightmare Staff is the best mage spec weapon, but it doesn't really do that much damage, and it also is very inaccurate. So they basically want to make Magic Claws or Zerai Crossbow, essentially. The quintessential magic spec weapon. So it's worse to camp this thing in the IAC, which I guess is necessary to keep the IAC relevant. Plus 30 magic accuracy and some flavorful defensive bonuses with no inherent magic damage percentage. Its special attack costs 50% energy, fires off 100% increased accuracy and 50% increased damage. If the initial hit connects and deals damage, you will be imbued with energy from Infernus itself, getting a powerful buff. While buffed, your next 3 attacks will, with the Gatekeeper's Cane, have 100% accuracy and 50%. Oh my god, it's... If you were around for when Toa was pitched, this was one of the functions of the old Shadow of Tumekin in their original blog. That's really funny that they brought this back. Yeah, I think that there's a niche for this. I think this is perfectly okay to include. The question is, where is this going to be useful, right? They say all God Wars generals, Calpite Queen, Dagonoth Rex, Zoro, Magma Phase, Whisperer on right hand. I think there's space for this weapon. I think there's a unique use case too, because like they say in this paragraph, it isn't all one hit, it's a bunch of hits in a row that do a bunch of damage. I think this is a cool and unique DPS spec weapon, and more interesting than D-Claws and ZCB is. This is fun. I like this. I say put it in the game. But I have a problem. A big problem. A nuclear grade problem right here, boys. Infernus is assuming that this is going to be like an infernal weapon, which means we're not... I mean, I guess Ascension crossbows are Guthix technically, quote-unquote technically a Guthix weapon, but nothing that's like firmly Guthix themed, which is kind of a bummer to me. I don't know if other people feel this way, but just theming-wise, I wish this was a Guthix themed item somehow. I don't know if that's going to be hard to pitch. Not that an infernal weapon wouldn't fit because it is God Wars and demons are Zamorak aligned. So thematically, it doesn't not fit. I just wish it was Guthix, because now we're just not really getting a Guthix item at all. Lastly, in this blog is the new Zeal Prayer. This is a straight up piety upgrade, like pretty plainly. The main thing is that the strength percentage is getting giga buffed. From 23% to 28%, that is a gigantic leap. And to be honest, it's kind of a necessary leap. Melee has fallen behind for the past, since the blowpipe came out. And especially now with the IAC, Melee is very firmly in last place for DPS checks. This will give it more contention in the DPS race. I'm okay with this being introduced with the game. The question, though, is how it's implemented, right? This shouldn't just be an outright scroll unlocked, in my opinion. This should be a big reward that you have to get. Maybe you have to get like 2 pieces of like a gem, and you bring them to an altar and you sacrifice the gems and you get the prayer. I don't know. Because now we're cutting down the amount of uniques you get from the raid by getting hybrid armor. Maybe you get like 2 separate gems that let you combine and sacrifice the Guthix to get a new upgraded Zeal Piety. But yeah, I mean, this should come from this raid, I think, that Melee and Piety gets its day in the sun. It's been lagging behind for so long now. Melee has really struggled to keep up with DPS with the other 2 combat styles that Melee really needed this. And they talk about here how they want to make the upgrade a little more ceremonial and exciting, and I think that's good. I also think that it shouldn't just be a 1 scroll unlock thing. Maybe you get multiple drops, maybe you have to collect amount of resources or something. I'm not sure. Let me know how you think this should be implemented as a drop in this raid. Because just dropping it as a scroll, I don't think, like, don't just make it a scroll. That's all I got. Thank you for watching this video. If you don't agree, let me know in the comments. Or if you do agree, also let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you're beautiful, and don't subscribe if you're also beautiful. I don't know. Screw you, guy. I'm logging off.